Hello, my name is Masaki Oji. I'm from Japan. I'm a junior student at Calvary University. I'm studying intercultural studies and I play soccer here at Calvary. So my parents are Christians, so I kind of grew up in church, but it was a long process to come to Christ. When I was 16 years old, I committed myself to follow Christ and I found out Calvary and I started coming here 2017. I'm here by my old Sunday school teacher who looks like 16 years old but 32 years old today.
Hello, my name is Takuya Takagi. Everyone calls me Tak. I'm sophomore student at Calvary now. And I'm 32 years old. Look like 16 years old. I'm studying a pastoral ministry here. I'm planning on going back to Japan as a youth pastor or missionary, whatever God wants me to do. My parents are Christians, so I grew up in Christian family, which is rare in Japan because the Christian population in Japan is only 1% or less than 1%. So it's just God's grace. God chose me to be Christian. I end up coming here when I was 30 years old. I decided to follow Jesus through my life.
So I said I grew up in church, but I have two brothers and a sister, but they're not Christians. I'm only believer in my siblings. In my elementary school and junior high school, I was only believer in school, so it was kind of hard for me to be Christ-like. I mean, I did not commit myself to follow Christ at the time, but still, that was hard to be like a Christian.
So as Masaki said, also when I was teenagers, I was the only Christian in my class. And when I was elementary school student, I invite my friends to come to the church every week. But when I get older, I've never said, I'm Christian, so do you want to come to the church? So it's hard to be Christian in Japan because we are minority. People think Christianity is like foreign religion. It's not for us, it's for foreigners. They have no idea about God and Jesus Christ. So in those situations, it was hard to claim that I am Christian and I'm different. I believe Jesus Christ as our Savior. The major religion is Shinto and Buddhism. So Shinto is Japanese original religion. So they believe there are many gods in this world and they go to shrine to pray and to worship gods. So Japanese Buddhism is not like original Buddhism. When it came to Japan, it changed to like different religion, like to mix with Shinto to be believed in, for Japanese. So it's also like kind of Japanese original religion.
I would say many people claim themselves as Buddhism or Shintoism, but I don't think they actually follow the customs or practice. They just say because of their parents were Buddhism or Shintoism. Well, like I think lately people tend to be atheists rather than believe in God. So going to shrines or the Buddhist temple is more like lucky charm.
I'm still looking for the way how we can evangelize Japanese people effectively. But I think like testifying Christ through our lives and building relationships are really important in Japan. We have to testify Christ through our lives so that they could see Christ in our lives. I believe that is really important.
So I think social media will be a good tool to share the gospel in Japan because there are people who don't know about Christianity and they have stereotypes that Christianity is something really weird or like Tak said, it's foreign for us. So using social media and introduce ourselves, what the church looks like, what we do at church, and I think that's a really good way to share the gospel. Actually, one time I had an opportunity to show the video from my church to my friend when I was in high school. And I showed the video, him like we are praising God, blah blah, and he was like, wait, what is this? Is this a church? It looked like a club or something. But it's not a club at all. We were just rejoicing in the Lord, praising God how He worked through us, in us. And that was pretty cool to see how he was interested in Christianity at the moment. So I think social media would be a really good tool to share the gospel in Japan.
I'm learning about discipleship. It is the core idea that spread the word of God and evangelize people because in Japan, only pastor or missionaries should present gospel, but it's not true. Every Christian has to evangelize people, has to present gospel, but they don't know how to present gospel, how to teach the Bible. So I'm learning how to teach them and how to disciple them to be follower of Jesus Christ. If I go back to Japan, I can't do anything because I'm just nothing. But if I disciple at least like 10 youth, it's like 10 times. It's really important.
So I'm in the cultural studies, and this class is mainly focusing on share the gospel in different cultures. So until I study about cultures, I didn't know what kind of culture I'm in. So I didn't know like differences between America and Japan, or even different cultures. So this study has helped me in a way that understand what my culture is and seek common ground between Christianity and Japan.
I think one of the effective ministry in Japan is teaching English to the young people. So now younger generations they want to learn English and they want to speak, they want to listen, they want to talk with Americans. So many missionaries from America do that kind of ministry. So and it really works well. So if you can speak English, you should go to Japan as a missionary.
We'll see you in Japan. If you can pray for my home church, Takiyama Church, that would be great. And also if you can pray for people who are coming to Japan as a missionaries and help them to have a heart of evangelizing the people in Japan. That would be great. Thank you. そして彼らに言われた。収穫は多いが働き手が少ない。だから収穫の主にご自分の収穫のために働き手を送ってくださるように祈りなさい。And he said to them, The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest.
Very good. Enjoyed that. I wish I could say, like him, that I'm 65 but look 45. We'll see how he looks when he's 65, right? And he'll probably do that, though. He'll look young still. That was good. I wish I could go to Japan and visit you guys someday. Maybe we'll get to do that. Well, it's good to be back this afternoon. I told you guys this morning that that I worked with the Yanomamo people. Someone asked me, so I'll mention it to all of you, that some places call them the Yanomami. I call them the Yanomamo here in America because a famous anthropologist came down there and studied them, did his doctoral thesis on the Yanomamo, became very, very, very famous in anthropological circles, and he calls them the Yanomamo. And he calls them that because they're really the Yanoamu. And he knows Americans can't say that. And so he's just changed it to the Yanomamo. And as I travel around speaking, a lot of people have studied the Yanomamo in Anthropology 101 when they were in college, so they've heard of them. And if I call them the Yanoamu, they think I'm the nut, because I'm not saying it like the big dog is, who is the famous guy, even though the famous guy is not saying it right. So I use the term that's sort of more accepted in American anthropological circles. And if you were in South America, you would hear them called the Yanomami, because the Latin-speaking, Portuguese-speaking hear the at the end of that word as a E, and Americans have a tendency to hear it more as a O or something around there. So that's why you might hear a couple different pronunciations of the name of the Yanomamo. But to say it, to understate it, it was quite a ride working with the Yanomamo people. And obviously, in the short time I have, I won't be able to tell you all of that. Having said that, I wasn't planning, but this is a good place for the advertisement. To come back this evening, if you can, right next door. I'm going to get into it a whole lot more and show you a lot more pictures of the Yanomamo and what life was like amongst those people. Just to help you understand them better. But just one quick story here before I get back to what I want to do. I remember learning as we lived amongst them that we would end up having quite a few poisonous snake bites every year. And I also learned that they're always on your foot or your toe, and realized, man, if you just wore shoes, you'd have been pretty much protected. Every Yanomamo I ever treated was bit on the foot, except one who was bit in the head. And that was a lady who was in the creek, along the edges of the creek, catching crabs with a basket that they make, and a snake was on the bank and got her right in the head. And she came in, and of course we had to take care of her. But we ended up handling quite a few a year. I would guess a dozen a year of poisonous snake bites, and almost all of them were the same kind of snake called the bushmaster, which is really in the rattler family. So it's a hemotoxin. It attacks your blood. It's not a neurotoxin. The neurotoxin snakes are even more dangerous, that attack your nervous system, and there's very little you can do for that. You may be a goner if you get bit by one of those. Thankfully, we don't even really have those in America. And there are very few of those in South America. But at any rate, the bushmaster was a hemotoxin, and we learned how to treat them. And many of the victims that we would treat came from the neighboring valley. We lived in a valley that ran north and south, and we found out later about 8 hours walk over was another valley that was almost parallel to ours, and it was almost literally on the Brazilian border. But it was Venezuela, and there were a whole pile of Yanomamo over there, and they were our enemies, the enemies of our valley, our people. Not my enemies, but the enemies of the people that I lived with. And they soon found out we could treat snake bites and save people's lives. And so whenever someone get bit by a snake, they'd send a kid over, because they knew that, our guys wouldn't shoot one of their young guys. Wouldn't count, sort of, in their minds. So they would send someone over, and I remember one time a young buck came running over, and he would run that hike. I only hiked it a few times, because after doing it a few times, we realized this is for the birds. We're Americans. Americans, come on. We figure out an easier way to do this kind of thing. Get over to that valley 8 hours away, and I had grown up riding dirt bikes, and so I thought, I'll bet you money I could ride a dirt bike on this trail. And so we asked the Lord for dirt bikes. I thought, being a missionary, I'd never have a dirt bike again. Missionaries are poor. They wear hand-me-down clothes, for heaven's sakes, is what I thought, And so I thought, and here I am out in the middle of the jungle, and God supplied a brand new Honda dirt bike for me and for my coworker. And we paid Yanomamo guys to take machetes out there, widen the trail a little. And I was in my glory. I could not believe this is part of my job. I have to ride dirt bikes over to this other valley to preach the gospel. We actually honestly would feel guilty. It's no lie. We'd stop halfway over to get a drink and say, this is ridiculous. We are having a blast, and this is our job. We have to ride motorbikes through the jungle, man. We loved it. I still love that kind of stuff. I don't get to do it much. But I remember, though, we decided to get these motorcycles. There's my motorcycle. That's what they look like. And I used to ride my little kids on the front tank, take them with me sometimes. They'd ride up there like riding a horse, sort of, and it was a blast. But I remember this kid coming over. He told us snake bite, Well, that for us, that meant kick into gear. And we were always prepared for that. And my coworker and I would grab our little backpacks like a lot of you guys carry nowadays, and we'd throw the right medicine in there. At that time, it was a whole bunch of shots that you had to give them all around here, and each shot would blow up like a balloon, and it would slowly go into their system and fight off the poison of the snake. So we'd grab all that. We'd grab a little bit of sardines and something to eat in case we had to spend the night, and we'd usually grab a hammock that we'd throw in there, a little one, and everything we need. We'd jump on our motorcycles and we'd take off. And that's what we did. And so we took off, and we went probably 20 minutes climbing this long jungle hill, and up at the top we'd usually stop and say, okay, everything's all right, let's keep rolling. Well, we stopped at this point about 20 minutes out, and noticed the teenage boy, he had run back with us. He had just run the 8-hour hike. Now he's running back with us. Couldn't believe it. My coworker says, oh man, the poor dude, why don't you give him a ride? I thought, give him a ride? I've never given a Yanomamo a ride. I was petrified to give a Yanomamo a ride because I knew they did not understand machinery and motorcycles, hot mufflers, and, you know, I've already told you, sorry, but they're not wearing pants. So if you just touch even the guard on the muffler, just about burn you with no pants on. I just knew this is too dangerous. I'm not giving Yanomamo rides. But in the heat of the battle, and my coworker told me that, I thought, oh yeah, poor guy. So I turned to him. You couldn't say in Yanomamo, you want to ride? You couldn't say that. They don't have a word for ride. They don't have the verb. By the way, they have a whole bunch of verbs you and I don't have. They aren't like, oh, they can't think very clear. They're closer to monkeys. No, they're made in the image of God, and they have verbs that you and I can't even hardly explain. You got to live there and live it to figure out what that meant that they just said, because there's nothing we have in English. At any rate, I couldn't say that, and so I just said, get on. He looked at me like, get on? No, I never said that to any Yanomamo. Get on? Really? Yes, get on. So he jumped on, and my coworker took off, and I let my clutch out, and I went about 3 foot, and he let out a scream. I slammed the brakes on. Oh, my goodness. And I turned around to ask him, what's going on? When I turned around, I couldn't believe what I saw. I could have shot my coworker for suggesting such a thing, but that guy had put his foot on the bottom chain. I never thought to tell him, put your feet on that thing right there, the foot peg. I would never tell that to you. You'd think I'm an idiot telling you that. It's like, what do you think I am, stupid? Where with the Yanomamo, he's never done this. He doesn't know anything about motorcycle. Puts his foot on the chain. Of course, you go 2 foot right up into the sprocket, and the big toe was basically cut off in the sprocket. And I could tell it was connected with a little bit of skin still. He's holding it, screaming at me. I could not believe it. So I whistled for my coworker. Within seconds, he realized I wasn't behind him. He came back, and I'm still sitting there trying to figure out what to do, And he says, well, let's back it up and get the toe out, So we backed up, and finally the toe came out. It's hanging by a piece of skin. It's like, now what do we do? So we quickly laid him down. I took my shirt off, wrapped his foot all up, and we said, we got to go home. We got to rush back home. Do something. So I got on a motorbike. He put the guy up there with me and put his legs up here. Okay, that's what we should have done to begin with. Never thought about this. So wrapped him around me like all fours, and we turned around and raced home. And as we went by our houses, we had a little medicine hut, like a dispensary. We called a medical dispensary hut, and we had quite a bit of nice medical equipment, and we had some training. And so we took him up there. We whistled to our wives, get up there. We need help here. And we all went up there, laid him down, and we unwrapped it, and what do we do now? His toe's basically cut off. My coworker says, well, we might as well finish it, that piece of skin. And I said, no, don't do that. I don't know why, but let's not do that yet. We kept looking at it and thinking and cleaning and praying, and I finally said, why don't we try to sew it back on? What do we got to lose? Besides a toe, but, so we got out all the equipment. We had all the equipment for that kind of stuff. We even had Novocaine to have no pain and all that. And so I started sewing the toe back on. And I tell people, really, when it comes to sewing a toe on, about all I knew was make sure the toenail's up, I don't know anything else. I don't know what I'm doing except make it look right. Put it where it's supposed to be is what all I knew. Doctors would take them 4 hours to do it and hitch everything up and all. We just stuck it there, hold it right there. And I went all the way around with a whole bunch of sutures till it at least looked like it was sort of in the right place. And by then, he's not moaning because we've killed the pain for him. And we told our wives, clean him up, wrap it up good, give him a big shot of penicillin. We'll be back. We're going to the snake bite. And we took off. Well, we got back, the next day. And by then, his toe was turning black. It was gray at first, and it was like, oh, brother. Every day we'd unwrap it and clean it, give him another shot of antibiotics, and then wrap her back up, and every day it was just getting worse to where within about 3-4 days we thought, okay, we're going to have to take it off. That's dangerous. Gangrene's going to set in. And believe it or not, about that time, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 days in, we unwrapped it, and all of a sudden I noticed a couple little pink spots. Ooh, something's happening. Hey, and over the next few days, that toe started to lighten up, and it eventually got pinkish. Whoa, something happened. It's a miracle, really, because we have no clue what we were doing. Just stick her on there, you know. And that toe actually survived. I think I have a picture here of my buddy, right? Let's see here. Not the toe. That's my buddy. I actually have a picture of the toe, and I can't find it. I got to find it someday. But that's my buddy. And while he was walking around with his foot up, you know, and just on his heel, I had him go in the backyard one time and took a picture of him because I liked his earrings there. Those are toucan feathers in there, by the way. The yellow and the red come from the Fruit Loop bird. But he stayed with us about 6 weeks until that baby was totally healed. He was normal. He slept in our house the whole time. But the only problem was, not a problem, but the only mistake was, after it was all healed, his foot kind of looked like that, you know, the toe stuck. I didn't get it over there good enough, you know. I had it just out there a little bit too far. But who cares? He can still use it. And that is really important for walking. That big toe is more important than any other toe. That's what you balance with, is what the doctors say. And it's kind of true. You need that thing to heal well. And so all kinds of things happen like that to us. If I start telling those kind of stories, we'll never get out of here. But, I mean, I've sutured up some of the wackiest stuff in the world. You just never dreamt, being a missionary, I was going to have to do this. Actually, I kind of enjoyed it when it worked well. You know, when you really could help somebody, it felt really good. My wife, she hated it. She'd hold the flashlight for me, you know, and didn't even want to look at it while I would suture it up. But we got drug into all kinds of things because we're living with people who don't even know what medicine is. They have no clue about anything when it comes to medicine and medical and infection, and they have no clue what causes any of it. Can you imagine living a life when you have no clue about that stuff? You don't have no clue coughing all over somebody might be spreading what you have. Not a single clue. So guess what happens in a Yanomamo village? One person gets something, it gets spread through the whole village quicker than scat. They're coughing all over each other. They've never washed their hands. They would see us doing it. They don't even know what we're doing. What's that all? What do we do this stuff for? You know, they have no clue, not because they're sort of stupid or because they're closer to apes than us. No, it's because no one ever told them. I always thought to myself, wow, look at all the stuff I've been told. I had no clue how much I've been helped just by growing up in America and even telling me about germs. By the way, try telling people like the Yanomamo about germs. Okay, when they don't think that's what causes anything, and you can't see germs. You believe there's something you can't even see, you know, that's making you sick. That sounds just as wild to them as them telling me that someone did sorcery on me and that's why I've got malaria. Okay, by the way, we eventually brought in a great big powerful microscope. We started showing them some of those things just for fun. Show them what's in your blood when you have malaria. By the way, if you ever get malaria, take a drop and take a look at it. It'll shock you. Full of what look like little worms wiggling in there. Oh, that's what's getting you. And that's what's killing your red blood cells. And they will multiply by the millions as time goes by and kill you if you don't get them little worms killed, we told them. And they started being willing to take that medicine, buddy, when they saw all that. It was really, I was going to say fun. Yeah, some of it was really fun. Some of it's very, very discouraging at times. But this morning I mentioned to you guys the need, as I called it, to stick to the business. And like I said this morning, it's, in my opinion, awful easy to lose track. Awful easy in life to lose track of why we are really here. I would suggest to you that in our culture, that's what the enemy uses maybe as much as anything to get us not to be involved in what God really wants us doing, is just get us to lose track. Just get us to follow what the crowd's doing. I'm not talking bad stuff. I'm talking just what everybody else is doing, what everybody else lives for. It's so easy to lose track of why I'm here as a believer. Why does God leave us here? You ever wonder that? Boy, it would be so much easier if I get saved and I'm out of here. Man, that would be nice. No more battling with sin. No more battling with the flesh. No more all the hassles of life. Go to be with the Lord, for heaven's sakes. It would be wonderful. Why does he leave us here? Because he could just say, okay, come on home. Boom, done, gone, as soon as you get saved. But he doesn't. He leaves us here for a purpose. And life seems to have a tendency to cause us to lose track of that. Work, study, family, recreation, fun, entertainment, media, on and on it goes are the things that eat away at my focus. Eat away at our focus. In your generation, it became bigger, and my generation has just continued to mushroom. Entertainment just steals your focus, steals your attention. People live for the weekend when they can binge on a show they like. You know, get on Netflix and watch all 15 of the last year's sessions. Nothing wrong with that in and of itself if the show itself isn't garbage. But what happens to our focus when that becomes such a big part of life? Every generation's had those same kinds of things. And the enemy uses that stuff, I would suggest, to steal my focus and steal my focus on what's the purpose of all of this. And let me warn you guys, I feel always guilty if I don't, because I'm getting older and I realize how fast life goes. It goes really fast, you guys. And if you don't pay attention now, it'll be too late. It's going to go really fast. I know it's hard to believe right now. I wouldn't have believed it when I was your age either. I cannot believe I went on Medicare last year. I can't believe it. Can't believe I'm that old. I remember playing high school football, and now it's over. Life's going to be over for me soon. I'm older than my father when he died. He died younger than I am. And the point I'm making by saying that is life will go by so fast that if you don't pay attention and keep your focus on what is this really all about, what's God wanting to do with me on this earth, you will come to the end of life's road and you will be massively disappointed. And it might even echo in your ears what you heard that kind of weird missionary saying when I was back at Calvary. This session right here might echo in your ears. When you're 72 years old or 82 years old or whatever it is, and you can tell we're almost done. And I didn't pay attention. I feel guilty if I don't challenge you. Pay attention. Because I'm building on the premise that I believe is true, that all of you younger folks here, you care about God. That's why you're at Calvary, for heaven's sakes. Why would you be at Calvary University if you don't care about God and what God's doing and what life really is all about from God's perspective? That's why I was excited to come here, because I know that the majority of us care about those kinds of things. So I just want to challenge you, stick to the business, because at the end of life's road, this is one aspect that was fun of watching my dad die 62 years old of brain cancer. To see him, he said this to me one time. I'll never forget. He said, you know, he says, when you guys were little boys, he said, I almost quit being a missionary. He says, I felt like I didn't have enough money to feed you guys. I'm like, what are you talking about, Dad? I don't remember none of that. We always had ice cream in the fridge. What are you talking about? I didn't say that, but that's what I'm thinking. But in his mind, because he didn't have much in his mind. And he didn't really, but I don't remember it that way. But I remember him saying, I'm so glad I didn't. I'm so glad I didn't. He was going to face the Lord. He was going to die soon. And he was so glad that he hadn't given up just because he thought he didn't have enough money. And that kind of always rings in my ears. God's got us here for a reason. Don't miss out on it. I just want to take a few minutes we have here to look at what I might call halftime in God's time. In one sense, I was trying this morning just to remind us that, let's call it, even in the first half, the Old Testament, that God's focus was exactly what it is today. He's reaching out to all the peoples of the earth because he cares about all of them. And he wants true worshipers from every kind, from all the peoples. But I want to look at halftime. A little meeting in the locker room, if you want to use a sports analogy. If you're using the sports analogy, you could say that what I want to look at is the locker room meeting at halftime. Now, sorry, I'm a sports fanatic. By the way, if any of you are Kansas City Chief fans, I'm as disgusted as you are with that game the other night. I was looking so forward to coming to Kansas City after they whooped the New England Patriots and shoot. When I was landing last night, I was looking for the stadium. I was trying to see it from the airplane. I drove there one time, driving through Kansas. My son was a Kansas City Chief fan, and so I purposely took us through Kansas City and drove over to the stadium. I got a picture of him out there at the stadium. But using this sports analogy, I want to look at what, and I'm not using this terminology to belittle this. It's just kind of, as a sports nut, it makes sense to me. At the locker room at halftime, there's a little locker room meeting at halftime that most of us know about it, but for some reason it's not really talked a whole lot about in Christendom. Thinking about the Yanomamo people in sports, we lived amongst them, and one of the things I found out about them was, again, no sports, no competitions. It's like, wow. To me, that was so big growing up. Watching sports, playing sports, and here's a group of people, the young people have no sports. They've never seen a ball. Can you imagine there's people on the earth never seen a ball? Never seen a ball. Not a football, just a ball. That was shocking to me. I don't know about you, but that's kind of like bizarre. And I remember going out there. I had my little son, and I'm like, he's going to grow up liking football, whether he likes it or not, And so I'd go out on the airstrip and teach him how to run a flag and how to run a post and all these different patterns if you're a receiver. And I was a quarterback in high school, and so I was going to brainwash my boy into liking football, whether he liked it or not, and he does. He loves it. Now he's doing it to his boys. But the Yanomamo would watch us. They have no clue what the world's going on. Forget trying to teach them football. That's too complicated. I remember the only sport or what I would call a sport that I saw them doing, if you want to call it a sport, is tug of war. And what's even more bizarre, that's at a funeral. It's like, tell me this isn't bizarre. What the world are we doing having a tug of war at a funeral, And I don't know if they could even tell you why. It's just something they do. It's when two big villages get together for a funeral, these kinds of things happen. Even though it's, at the end, the actual final thing they do is really sad. They do dances and tug of war, and I had a lot of fun watching them play tug of war. But sports, as we know it, where you kind of have all the fun we do, they didn't have any of that. We taught them soccer, by the way, and that's what really took. They love soccer. And they could just stick two sticks in the ground and play soccer. And I'm sure they're playing that to this day. I made them a soccer field, and man, they wore that down to dirt so quick. Grass never did grow there again because they play so much soccer. But back to our halftime. I want to first look at Matthew chapter 16 to set the stage here. In Matthew chapter 16, Jesus went to this place this is a real picture of Caesarea Philippi. That's the Jordan River, and that mountain in the backgrounds, it runs out of that mountain, out of a cave in that mountain. And the branch of the Jordan River that starts in Israel starts in Caesarea Philippi. Very interesting place if you ever get to go to Israel. But Jesus has taken his disciples to Caesarea Philippi in Matthew chapter 16. And you get the sense he wants to get away from the Pharisees and all the people that are giving him grief. He's sick and tired of the hassle right now. And he backs off up to Caesarea Philippi, and he takes his boys there, the disciples, and he talks to them a bit. We did that, and that's why I took this picture. We did that just thinking of what Jesus did. And in Matthew chapter 16 is when Jesus asks them, who do people say I am? And then he says to them, but who do you guys say I am? Who do you, my disciples, say I am? Remember this verse here? Peter had said, you are the Son of the living God. He fingered him exactly right. Jesus turns to Peter and he says this, and I also say to you that you are Peter. And upon this rock, not Peter, on the rock that Peter had just exposed, Jesus, the Son of God, I will build my church. And the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. Nothing will stop it, he says. It's the first time in the Bible the word church shows up. And the disciples have no clue what he's talking about. It's almost hilarious to me if you study this, that it goes right over their heads. Zoop! They don't catch what he's saying. Even when he dies, they have no clue. They have no clue what's going on when Jesus dies. It seems to go over their heads all the time. And of course, that's because they're looking for a physical kingdom with the Messiah king. And Jesus has said, no, sorry, I'm building a church first. And the disciples don't catch it. If you keep reading this, they have no clue. This is when Peter tells Jesus, no, don't worry. None of this is going to happen to you. We'll make sure. And this is when Jesus says to Peter, right here at Caesarea Philippi, get thee behind me, Satan. He's not calling Peter Satan, but he's rebuking Satan, who's using Peter to tempt him not to do what he came to do, right? And Jesus tells them this. In verse 21, the Bible says that from that time on, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and that he will suffer many things from the hands of the elders and the chief priests and scribes, and they will kill him. And he'll be raised again the third day. This, at least in the scriptures, appears to be the first time Jesus tells them, here's what's going to happen. And this is when Peter said, no, don't worry. And he said, be quiet. Get thee behind me, Satan. I'm going to do it. This is what I came to do. I came to die to pay the penalty of sin and then build a church, a gathering, sometimes called the body, a gathering of people like our sign up here says, of true worshipers. We all know what happens. Jesus does it. He actually goes to Jerusalem. By the way, have fun sometime. Read Matthew from chapter 16 on and underline how many times Jesus told them, I am going to go to Jerusalem, be killed, and I will rise again the third day. Just underline how many times he told them before it happened. Of course, when it happens, none of them are believing what Jesus said, right? Nobody believes what he says. Nobody's saying, okay, 3 days, we're waiting. Can't wait, man. He walked on water, then I'm sure he's going to do this. Man, this is going to be a blast. I can't wait to see him again. No, nobody. Nobody, not a soul. Nobody on planet Earth realizes what's going on. In one sense, it's bizarre. In another sense, it's not. Because it's amazing how many people, Christians on planet Earth today, have no clue what's really going on. Are clueless, are not paying attention. Not reading their Bibles correctly, have no clue what's going on. It's really sad. So this doesn't surprise me, and I'm not throwing stones at him. It's just the way we humans are. But it was after he rose again that the little meeting in the locker room at halftime takes place. Believe it or not, Jesus had not only told his disciples he's going to rise again, he had told them where he wants to meet them after he rises again. We won't go look at all that, but he had told them. You'll see that here in a second. But none of them are there waiting for him. They're not there waiting for him. It takes a few ladies to go to the tomb, not to see Jesus. They go to put perfume on a dead body. But I must give the girls credit, though. At least they're going to the tomb. Where's the boys? The guys are hiding. They're scared. We're next. You know, Peter's lied 3 times. I don't even know that guy. Okay, so the guys are hiding scared. At least the ladies go to the tomb. At least they go to the tomb. I don't want to get into that too much because it makes me very ashamed as a guy. I'm embarrassed that the guys are hiding while the ladies at least are going to the tomb. Why is it to this day that women respond more readily to the need to take the gospel to the ends of the earth than the men do? I have no clue. I'm embarrassed. I was told the other day there's a group that's going to come and visit us at this place that we call Wyoming, where Josh and James came to visit me last year. And, you know, Josh has already told you they're coming again in March. And they're hoping to bring some of you with them. I'm hoping they do too. Because I do not want to be teaching Josh and James again. I'd like to have a bunch of you guys come along and have some fun with us. There's another group coming in March. They'll be there different groups will be there every week in March. And this one Bible college I was at recently, they're coming, and they told me they had a meeting where they were trying to get people interested in coming to Wyoming. And the girls told me in the dining room talking, they said, yeah, we had our first meeting. There were 50 girls there and 3 boys. I'm like, oh, Lord, 50 girls and 3 boys. Now, that doesn't mean all of them are going to come, but 50 girls and 3 boys. And then they told me those 3 were 3 boys who had already gone once to Wyoming. I'm like, oh, man, isn't that a picture of the day? Where are the guys? Where are the guys? What the world's going on? Why is it that women respond more quickly to what God wants done than the men? I do not know, and if you've got a good answer for me, let me know. I just don't understand it. You know, it's the girls that volunteer to teach the Sunday school classes, not the guys most of the time. Try to get a guy to teach a Sunday school class at my church. Man, out of 450 people. It's just like pulling hen's teeth. But girls, yeah, they're manning all of them. I don't know, guys. We need to step up. But finally, because the girls prod the guys, I guess that still happens to us guys, right? I just saw one of you guys, I forget who it was, his wife was telling him where to go. So we still get prodded by the girls. But the girls prod the guys, and the guys finally go to the locker room. Okay? They finally go, well, look at this verse in Matthew 28. You know this. In Matthew 28, the Bible says this. Finally, the 11 disciples go away to Galilee, where Jesus had told them. And look at this. To the mountain which Jesus had appointed to them. Jesus had told them the mountain he wants to meet them on after he comes out of the grave. They finally go there. They finally go to meet Jesus in Galilee. And you guys are Calvary, you students, so you know exactly what happens in the locker room at halftime. In the locker room at halftime, the Bible tells us this. Jesus sits the guys down, and he says this. He came and spoke to them and said, hey, in case you don't know it, all authority's been given to me in heaven and in earth. When I read that, I get a nervous laugh. I can't imagine watching him killed, buried, and now he's standing in front of me, alive. Think of it. And he says, in case you haven't figured this out yet, all power been given to me up in heaven and down here on earth. Whoa, would that have been the lesson? I like to think of it as the proverbial ball bat upside the head. Whoa, man, that would have got your attention. I watched them crucify him, and now he's talking to me. And he says, all authority's been given to me. Now in verse, in the next verse, in verse 19, he says, go therefore. You guys know this, right? I don't have to tell you this. You're Calvary students. I like to say it anyways because it's a cool saying. In the Bible, when there's a therefore, you're always supposed to find out what the therefore is there for. That's what I got taught in Bible college. When you see a therefore in the Bible, you find out what the therefore is there for. In other words, it's connected to something is what they're telling you. Well, in other words, it's kind of like because. So, because what? You got to go back and find out what's the therefore. Well, in this verse, it's because he has said, all authority's been given to me. Now, because of that, he says, go and make disciples of all the nations. I want you to baptize them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost. And so, halftime in God's time, in the locker room, Jesus now is instituting something brand new. In football, those of you that play football, we call it, he's changing the game plan at halftime. New game plan. We're going to do this different. And Jesus lays out a new game plan for the second half. I kind of like using the sports analogy. Think of it, he benches Israel. Sit down on the bench, you guys. Benching you guys. You guys just kept following the gods of all the nations around you. You were supposed to be telling all of them about the true God Jehovah, and I catch you guys worshiping idols of them. Sit down on the bench. The Bible uses some of that kind of terminology almost, like benching. And he says, I'm starting out with a different group, second string, second half, sort of. And I'm calling them the church. I'm calling them the church. And we know now that that group would be made up largely of Gentiles, even though at the beginning it was made up largely of Jews, because they were the disciples of Jesus. But it quickly became largely a Gentile church. Here we are. Most all of us probably are Gentiles. And Jesus changes the plan, and the new team called the church now, look what he tells them to do. I want you to go and make disciples of all the nations. In the original text of this verse, the Greek Bible, in the Greek language, the word translated nations up there is the word ethnos. It's the word ethnos. So that's really what was said. Go and make disciples of all the ethnos. That's that peoples that we see translated in Hebrew in the Old Testament. Peoples, it's the same concept. Jesus is saying, I want disciples in every kind of people. Now go, let's go. Second string, get out on the field. We got a job to do. And he sends the second string, if you want to call them that, using a sports analogy. Get out there, guys. I did a series for my church recently on those guys that started the second half. Fascinating to find out what they did. Those guys went all over the known world. You know, we study Paul primarily because he wrote much of the New Testament, and so we have really good records of his life and what he did and where he went. He went to Ephesus, he went to Corinth, you know, all these places that we study. But if you do a little bit of research, it's amazing what the disciples did, the rest of them. You probably know Thomas went to India. In the time of Jesus, Thomas went to India? I don't know about you, but to me that blows my mind. I can't get America and go to India in an airplane. And Thomas goes to India to tell people in India what Jesus told him to do. That I'm impressed with Thomas. You know what I love about that story too, is that Thomas was the doubter. He was the doubter. That's why in English we even say, man, he's a doubting Thomas. I've heard them say that on television. They don't realize that comes from the Bible, doubting Thomas. Okay, poor old Thomas. And if you were named Tom, oh brother, you know, at one time that was the sign of a doubter, sort of. The doubter went all the way to India. And he gave his life there. If you study the lives of the 12 or the 11 disciples, it appears all of them but one were martyred, trying to spread the good news. Incredible. Their experience after the resurrection totally changed them. Jesus wants true worshipers in every ethnos. That's what he told us to do. Somehow or other, sometimes that whole verse, they chop off the whole end of it in Christendom. Lots of preachers preach it this way: go ye therefore and make disciples, period. Period. Sorry, I'm getting a little pushy here, but they put a period there when they talk. No, that's not what it says. It says, go and make disciples in every ethnos, all the ethnos. So for us to finally accomplish what he told us to do, we got to make disciples in every ethnos. Not just make disciples in Kansas City, more of them. There's a big job to do. And I have to tell you, I have to tell you in 2019 that there are still ethnos who have no disciples. I'm not talking about a village that has no disciples. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about races of people, ethnos, that have no disciples. We got to change this, guys. We got to do something about this. And I would suggest that that's why Calvary University is having a conference focused on global engagement. Because God cares about the world. And he has since the very beginning. But maybe even more particularly since Genesis 11, when all the peoples were scattered and all the different languages of the globe were developed by God. And so, I'm sorry, but I may never see most of you again. So I got to shoot straight with you. And as I look at a group like this, I know I'm prejudiced. I'm sorry, but I think I'm prejudiced because of what the Bible says. I look at you guys and I think to myself, oh my goodness, what we couldn't do if we all said, really? You mean to tell me there's ethnos that never heard of Jesus? You mean there's languages that don't know anything about Jesus? Whole languages? Okay, I'll go try to tell one of them. I flunked French in high school, but I'll give it a shot. I think there's a verse in the Bible somewhere that says something like, with God all things are possible, so I'll give it a shot. I can't help but wonder what would happen if more believers, especially young men and women, would say, really? I got to do something about this. I cannot go be an engineer. There's too many people that don't know about Jesus. We need more Thomases who are willing to give their lives for what the Master told us to do. I'll close with this. I said that, it just triggers my mind. When my dad died, people sent me just literally suitcase loads of his sermons. Taped them all over the country. Listened to every one of them. It was a blast. Made copies for all my siblings. And one of them, my dad, I hear him saying this at the end of a sermon. Who's going to hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant? I thought, oh, this will be fun. I wonder what my dad's going to say on this one. He's closing his sermon, and I hear him saying, who is going to hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant? And he said this. He said, I think it's those who paid attention to the orders of the Master and at least attempted to do what the Master told us to do. Stick to the business. God's doing something great on earth, guys. And I'm just trying to challenge you to jump on board. Let's go. He's got somewhere that he could use you to help accomplish what he's wanting to do on planet Earth. Lord, thank you for this little meeting in the locker room at halftime. And how you just made it very clear for us, Lord, what you wanted us to do. Thank you for Calvary University. A university like very few, even in our country, who are truly desirous to raise up men and women who will go out into the world and be used of you, whether it's right here or across the sea, to accomplish your purposes. Help us, Lord, to stick to your business in our hearts, in our minds, and trust you to guide our steps so that we, at the end of life's road, are thankful for what we spent our lives on. So we pray, Lord, that you might use this conference this week in your purposes here on this earth. And we'll thank you for it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Greg. See, this is why I needed the over the ear thing. I can't hold two things at the same time. All right. I'll try to multitask. So, we don't really multitask. We timeshare.
Oh, right.
I had somebody tell me this. So, all right. You guys have any questions? Hashtag Calvary questions. Get them in. Let's see what we got here. First of all, we are.
This is a little scary,
Yeah, it's a little. It's a little intimidating. You're kind of facing the firing squad here. I know. We'll start off with this. One student says that she is praying for your daughter and grandkids in Venezuela.
Oh, thank you very much.
So they're not that scary. Just
Right.
Okay.
That's pretty cool.
that
set me at ease.
Yeah, well, maybe a little bit. All right. Were you nervous at all when you first? Were you nervous at all upon first meeting the tribe?
The first time that I ever met the Yanomamo, I was nervous because it was actually in a village that had never seen outsiders. And I was with some very experienced missionaries, though, who at least theoretically knew what they were doing. And but I was in the front of a little canoe, a little two-man canoe, when we pulled into this bank, and there was a whole pile of them squatting up there. And yes, I was nervous. I didn't really think they would do something to us, but it was a little nerve-wracking. I've been a number of places where I visited villages that had never seen outsiders. Once I learned to speak the language, then I wasn't nervous at all, because I could right away tell them. They do have a word for friend, and you could tell them, hey, we're friends. And as soon as you could talk, that helped a bit. But one time, I won't get into how all this happened, but I was flying with the Venezuela military, because they were using us as guides, looking for who is mining gold illegally on these rivers, because the rivers were muddy during dry season, and they shouldn't be muddy, and so they know there's illegal activity going on. They were coming over from the Brazilian side, and we landed at one Yanomamo village in a helicopter. Of course, that just petrifies those people. And I still remember going into the village, and I'd never seen this. All the women and children literally were in a big pile, face down, piled on top of each other, scared to death. The men, they probably were scared to death but didn't want to act that way. And I remember going over to the ladies, telling them who I was. No, don't be afraid, and they look at you like, wow, and with that chopper still running outside, tuk, 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 none of them ever really came out of their pile. Felt really bad for them. But at times like that, they're probably more scared than we are. They had heard of us, because we lived about 3 days hike away, and they lived north of us. So they knew that these people like us lived down there. And when I told them who I was, I think that helped them a bit. But
just to piggyback off of that, how does Ethnos 360 prepare you for that moment when you're first entering the tribe?
Well, we do a lot of talking about that and training, and we don't usually do what I did that day. We would have never done that. Flown in there with a helicopter? It's just like people landing from Mars, and they're going to be petrified. Well, I want to make friends. So we would never do that. But I was with the government. I had to do what they told me to do. And we would go in a total different way, and we would do all we can to show that we're friends, make friends, because we don't work anywhere where they don't invite us, as it were. I mean, we try to get them to invite us, but we're not going to just go plowing in there. We want to be where they want us to be with them, and so we go about it quite different.
Good. They didn't sing, play sports, or binge watch Netflix. What did they do?
Well, all of you that are here at Calvary would have been married for quite a while already, and you'd be living as adults. You'd be working up a storm to stay alive. Gardening, hunting, fishing. You would be adults long ago. Girls are married around 13 years old. And a lot of times they'll have their first baby 13 or 14 years old. And life now is adult. And so they're not wondering, how can we have some fun and play football? You guys are lucky. I was lucky, if you want to call it that to grow up where from 12 years old at least to 18, you got to study and go to school and all that, but you're also expected to have fun. We have sports in school and all these other cool things, band and everything else you can do. That it's kind of like, have fun. We want you to have fun. Even here at Calvary, they do things. You guys went, at least I think you did, went skating the other night. And so and I grew up ice skating and love it. But our culture, encourages that kind of fun. Yanomamo don't even have the concept because bingo, they're into life. Soon as a girl could get pregnant, she's married, and then she's starting to have children. And so when you ask, what do they do? Well, they work. They do what an adult does during the time we would normally be playing. Little kids play. They just sort of play there in the dirt. They don't play cars, The closest thing to playing that I saw, girls would get, I don't know if you guys have ever seen a stalk of bananas hanging on a tree, on a banana plant actually. Has a great big flower at the bottom. Flower about that long, about that big around, hard, purplish looking thing. They cut that off and they carry that like a baby doll. Mothers carry their babies in a sling that they make out of bark. It's just like a wide band. They sit their baby in there, and as long as you keep your arm here, baby won't fall, and you don't have to carry the baby. It's really pretty cool, actually. My wife started making them for them out of nice stretchy cloth. But the little girls will make that same thing and carry that banana flower in there and sort of play mommy. It's the only thing I ever saw them like playing, really. The boys go around with their little bows and arrows shooting lizards and, trying to shoot hummingbirds out of the air and all this kind of stuff. They're copying their parents. That's all they know to do. Kind of like us to a certain degree.
Yep. In your opinion, what is the first step in ministering to someone from a different country, or in your case, peoples from a different country? Maybe you should say, come to Wyoming and find out.
Yeah, well, there's a good answer. Yes, come to Wyoming and find out more about that. But obviously, if you're trying to reach another kind of people, let's call it, another race, a different people than me, if I'm not their friend, I can forget it. Why would they listen to me? So obviously developing a friendship. We often talk about relationship nowadays. I agree. I prefer to call it friendship. Because I'm not just trying to have a relation so I can share Jesus with them. I want to actually be their friend. I want to be their friend. I want to be there for them, and I'm hoping later they might be that way for me too. So obviously developing a friendship with them, but then beyond that, one of the best ways you can win the heart of somebody is learn their language. There's nothing like learning their tongue. It's just like people that come to my country, immigrate here, and learn my language. I cannot help but like them and be impressed. I can't believe this person. They came from, you name the country. They come here and they truly learn my ways? They learn my ways? My language? I'll fight for them. Man, I will fight for that person. There's something that does something to me. Okay, and when they come here and don't learn my language, it doesn't do the same thing for me. Okay, I feel a little bit different about that. Okay, and the same thing is true when I go to the Yanomamo. If I learn their language, they think you're the coolest guy in the world. No one else has done that. And you can talk like us, and you would hear them bragging to Yanomamo who visit. Them guys, buddy, they got our tongue, they said. They talk just like us now. And they're proud of you, and it wins their hearts. It just makes them very open to you. And I would think even here at home, there's a group of Somalis that live in your area. If you truly would go try to learn their language, at least to be able to chit-chat with them, you're going to win their hearts. They're going to be very impressed with you. Now, here at home, sometimes what they tell you is, no, I want to learn English. Okay, so you can make a deal with them. You teach me Somali, I teach you English, okay? And they'll think you're really cool, and that will open doors like you can't imagine, even if you never actually learn it. But if you make an attempt at it, that's huge at winning hearts, I think, my opinion.
You mentioned a little bit about the gender gap between men and women in terms of missions. So this person had this question: do you think the expectations set up for each gender growing up makes this difference more apparent? Or is the gender issue that more of, I'm not sure, or is the gender issue more of a personal conviction than it is necessarily gender?
Brother, I have no clue. I don't know. You know, I was asking you guys, and now you're asking me. Well, you know, I don't know. I don't know if it's our culture because of maybe expectations of gender in our culture, what we expect men and boys to do. I don't know. Obviously, though, God made the genders different. And the mothering mentality of women, you know, that's stronger than in the males. I wondered, does that make them respond more to caring about people than males? I really don't know. I don't know. I just don't know. I know one thing, that when I was growing up, having a father who cared very, strongly about what Jesus told us to do, and then being exposed to a few people, other men like that, really impacted me. And I just kind of grew up thinking, what else is there to live for anyways? You know, because that's what my dad lived for, and he meant it. He didn't just say it, he meant it. And then I got to know a few missionaries that were that way, and I remember actually thinking to myself, that missionary guy, I want to go work with him. I want to be one of his co-workers, because he just challenged me just by how he lived. So I don't know. I don't know if guys are lacking male role models as much as the girls, who see a lot of female role models that care about teaching little kids in Sunday school, that care, you know, that growing up watching females be more responsive. Are females more responsive because of that? I really don't know. I do know it shouldn't be that way. Come on. These girls need husbands and go to mission field. Let's go. No, just kidding.
Well, statistically speaking, women outnumber men in missions by a factor of 2 to 1.
Wow.
There are twice as many women on the mission field as there are men.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's very disappointing to us guys. At least it is for me. Because we need those girls desperately. I know one lady that spent her whole life a single missionary out in the jungle with tribal people. And Dolores back there knows her. She's with the Lord now, Nancy Dillon. And I was so impressed with this lady. A lot of times by herself. I just couldn't believe it. I just felt like I shouldn't be anywhere near her. She's just so incredible. She just really impressed me. So there's some really, really incredible women out there serving the Lord. But we need more men, though, too. We need the men. Villages need men models, just like they need female models. So come on, guys. We need some of you.
Okay. I was curious. You talked about what the Yanomamo are called by various groups. What do they call themselves?
The word Yanoamu, it means, if you ask them, who are you? They say, we're Yanoamu. Okay, you write that down. Ooh, now we know what they're called. They're the Yanomamo. And then you learn their language and find, oh, shoot, that's a word for people. Actually, if it's singular, it's just Yanoama, that means person, literally. You have to make it plural to be people. But they say, I'm a person. You know, and you think it's the name of their tribe. And you, by the way, there's a lot of peoples in the world. The name for them that we call them is their word for people. Because a lot of them, at least at the beginning, didn't think of themselves as, oh, I'm a certain race and you're a different race. They don't think that way, a lot of them. And so they just say they're people. So in our Yanomamo Bible, every time the word people shows up, it's the word Yanomamo. It's really Yanoamu, like I told you, Yanoamu. And to pluralize it, you say Yanoamakaba. That's plural. And by the way, in Venezuela, we had anthropologists. You guys know that they usually aren't too friendly to missionaries. And we had anthropologists who were capable to find out that in the Bible, the word for people is Yanomamo. Of course, the Bible teaches that we, the people, crucified Christ. You know, we all did, our sins. And so they tried to ram that down our throats in the public and say, look at what those missionaries are doing. They're telling the Yanomamo that they're the ones that killed Jesus. You know, it shows you how clueless these anthropologists were of the language of the Yanomamo. No, we're not saying that. The Bible's saying that we the people did. But you see how they can turn it on you? Because they don't understand the language. It really is not saying the tribe did. It's saying people did that. The people. And so every time in the Bible the word people or person shows up, it's the word Yanomamo. So it's really not their name. They don't have a name. Except that's become their name now. That's become their name. And everyone thinks of them as the Yanomamo, even though they're really, I don't know, don't have another name. That makes sense?
One last thing. We have a request that you say something in Yanomamo.
Okay. What do I say here? Okay. I'll just do a little Bible. I'll just do a little Bible teaching here. Habadodeotaha, yai badatan, siboham waramuwe, yai badatan hududua babluka tabrare mahabadodiotaha. Habadodiotaha. Kama awanawan, yai badatan motoka batatabrarema, beriboa batatabrarema, shidikari babluka kain tablarema. Okay, that's really good Bible stuff there.
You got that, right?
Yeah.
Everybody got
Okay.
that?
And,
Yeah.
and don't go tell the president we were speaking in tongues in chapel either. Okay.
Although technically we were.
That's exactly right. Biblically we were,
Yes.
right? There you go. What I said was in the beginning, and I emphasized that a number of times, habadodiodaha is kind of like in the beginning. I said in the beginning, everything you can see outside, God made all that. And then I said that he made all of that by his word. Okay, Yanomamo didn't have a word for word, but they called words sound. So what we literally say in Yanomamo is by his sound, he made everything out there. Now they know you mean what he's saying. You know, and then I said he made the big sun, he made the big moon, he made all of the stars. Of course, they don't think the stars are big. They think they're little twinklies until we tell them. Of course, we would too if we didn't have science class in high school. Find out, oh my goodness, they're bigger than our sun. You know, that's kind of what I was saying, that God created all of that and that he did it all by his word. Come back tonight, I'll do some more of that. I'll even show you a little bit of their language maybe and just show you how. Here's a fascinating thought. We have never found a primitive language on the face of the globe ever. That's because they never existed. That's a figment of the imagination of the atheistic, evolutionistic scientist. Okay, that the Yanomamo language is so complicated grammatically that it's like my dad said, you know, I felt like I needed a whole suitcase of brain fuses. I just kept blowing my brain fuses trying to learn the Yanomamo language because the grammar is so complicated, you can translate the Bible. You know, it's just fascinating to me that people who look supposedly primitive, and they're not, but live primitive, yet speak a very complicated language, that alone blows the theory of evolution right out of the water. Something's wrong with their theory right away if they're honest. So come on back tonight, we'll talk a little bit about that.
All right. And so thank you, Greg.
Yes.